Hello, Capricorn. Welcome to your April 2023 astrology forecast. Now, I know we're already well into April. We didn't have too many big things going on at the beginning. We had Mercury coming into Taurus. We had a full moon in Libra. But all the really big stuff is going to be happening in that last week of April, week and a half of April. But before we get into the big events, I actually want to start with Pluto, okay? Pluto last month came into Aquarius, which was a big deal. And so we're just kind of getting a taste of what Pluto is bringing for us as he, goes through Aquarius. He is officially stationing retrograde. Well, he's in pre-shadow, okay? So he's starting to slow down. He officially stations retrograde on May 1st. So I know it's technically a May thing, but I want to make sure to point it out because throughout the big events in the last week and a half of April, we also have Pluto just inching forward, like barely moving at all. Now, Pluto brings a lot of desire wherever he is in the chart. And I think Capricorn's focus here is absolutely 100% on money and their material world. But it's also not just about having the material so much as it is making sure that you are living a life that is truly aligned with your highest values. And how do you merge these two things? Things you value the most in life and earning a really significant income. How do you bring these two things together? Now, this is kind of an internal thing that you're going to have to be processing. And when you're thinking about the things you value the most, this is something, that might create a shift. And I do think there's a lot of relationship stuff going on for Capricorn as well, especially if you are married or if you have a significant one-on-one connection with someone. It could be a client relationship, an employer, a friend even though I know friends usually comes through the 11th. But with Mars over here in the 7th, your one-on-one connections and relationships, specifically romantic, okay? But your one-on-one relationships are super highlighted right now, okay? And as you evolve, now everyone is evolving in their own way with this whole Pluto thing. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily mesh with the way someone else is evolving. And I think this month might highlight the differences between what you've got going on in your life and the path that someone else is taking. And I think you're optimistic about stuff and you're clearly willing to work on things, but I also don't think you're willing to compromise on that much. Okay, so in addition to Pluto, we also have an eclipse building. All right, so we had the full moon in Libra on the 6th. The moon is waning now. Now, normally when a moon wanes, it kind of loses, well, I don't want to say loses energy, but it just gets darker and it's kind of like the exhale when we breathe. It's kind of a more relaxing moon period. But not this time, okay? Because this time, even though the moon is still waning, what it's doing is it is coming into that perfect alignment between the earth and the sun. So this eclipse is happening on the 19th in the US. It'll be in the 20th in Europe and Australia, okay? And it's happening at 29 degrees of Aries. Now, Aries is very much, in the 4th house, it's very much about your private world. And because it is ruled by Aries, which is Mars ruled, we have to look at where Mars is, and here he is in the 7th house. So we have home and family down here where the eclipse is, and then we have relationship stuff kind of being tied into this. So your interpersonal, private, behind closed doors relationships are going to be accentuated. Now, this does not have to be a bad thing. I do think with this new moon, there is a substantial urge to initiate something. Now, a lot of people say, don't do anything during an eclipse. But sometimes eclipses are like, kind of destiny rectification type of thing. And the impulse that you feel to do something about stuff, I don't think this is the time to ignore those impulses. I don't know that there are going to be massive mistakes made during this time. When we feel that rush or that passion, because that not only do we have a new moon eclipse in Mars ruled Aries, but as the moon waxes and begins to build up to her full moon eclipse, which is happening in Scorpio, which is also traditionally ruled by Mars, okay? So we just have tons and tons of Mars energy in the chart right now. And Mars is the planet that is exalted in your sign. And right now it is opposite of you. So I think Capricorn is one of the signs that is going to feel these eclipses the most, okay? It's just so prominent in your chart, and it's such an important planet. Mars is such an important planet for Capricorn, okay? So don't ignore those impulses. Don't ignore that passion or those desires that are building up inside of you and asking you to move forward, or asking you to push, or asking you to take action with something. I don't know that you would be able to hold back even if you wanted to, okay? It might cause a little bit of a kerfuffle in relationships, an argument, a disagreement, something along those lines. Of course, Mars is in the house that often has to do with the other person. Now, I'm not blaming everything on them, but they may be feeling agitated, and you may have to kind of deal with that agitation. Look, everyone is going to be agitated, not just because the eclipse, but let's kind of go back a little bit. Okay. The eclipse is on the 19th. On the 21st, Mercury stations retrograde, which means that during the eclipse, Mercury is basically standing still. He's hardly moving, similar to Pluto, okay? We also have Pluto barely moving too. Mercury is going to be right next to Uranus. He's going to be stationing at the 15th degree of Taurus, right next to Uranus, which we know offers that electric quality to it. Now, Uranus can bring chaos and disorganization and revolution and change. It can also bring brilliance and new ideas and creativity and all that type of stuff. For Capricorn, I feel, well, actually, this is not just a Capricorn thing. I do sense a strong desire for freedom emerging here with this Mercury retrograde. And that everything that you're deciding, all of the choices that you're making are all rooted in this notion of having freedom. And it's financial freedom, it's personal freedom, it's time freedom, it's all the freedoms that you can think of. And this is probably something, that you truly value. And because there is such a substantial focus on financials for Capricorn with Pluto here, it's all rooted in what can I do to make sure I have the highest amount of freedom that I can attain. And freedom is going to be a word that will not go away for the next 20 years with Pluto in Aquarius. It just simply isn't. We're all trying to find new ways to experience freedom in our lives, okay? This Mercury retrograde is going to be the part of you that really just wants to, in a way, it feels like you want to evade responsibility. Like you have all this kind of hefty stuff going on with certain relationships in your life. We have Saturn over here in the third house, which is really wanting to make transitions and movement and to kind of, Saturn in the third does not want to be like stuck. Okay, it wants to explore, it wants to evolve, it wants to learn, it wants to take its mind all different sorts of places. And yet here we have, these like seventh house, fourth house events and activations going on. And it's sort of saying, yeah, but you've got responsibility, you have obligations, you have an agreement with someone, and you need to fulfill that agreement. And then here's this creative fifth house, Mercury, Uranus, who's like, yeah, but I just really want to like go into my creative space and make this thing happen. I have this idea. I want to write this book. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And things are kind of pulling you in that more obligatory way. So this is Capricorn needing to find or find a way to balance in some way, shape, or form these two aspects of yourself. Because I know that you don't want to completely shirk your responsibilities, but you also don't want to be standing still. And you know you're evolving, and maybe your partners are not necessarily evolving in the same way. And here you are having to figure out, how do we evolve together? Getting to know each other again, okay? Especially if you're in a long-term marriage. Now, if you're completely single, this might not have anything to do with a romantic relationship. It might have to do with something more familial, okay? Something with your family, all right? Tomorrow we have Venus coming into Gemini, which is going to activate the 6th house. Now, we had the Mars activity. Mars had been in Gemini for 7 months. He left Gemini back in March, and now Venus is like the next planet to come through Gemini, and she's offering stabilization here. For you, this is health stuff. This is work stuff going on as well. And if there are any professional relationships that, like workplace relationships that got kind of weird during that Mars thing, this is probably a time where those relationships can reach an equilibrium. I do feel Venus coming through Gemini, it is a little bit more lighthearted. And sometimes, because this has a lot to do with our habits, sometimes this particular placement or transit can make our daily habits more fun. Like, we just simply enjoy the daily aspects of life a little bit more when Venus is in the 6th. And Gemini is a fun sign. So this is about enjoying the everyday, mundane aspects of your life. Waking up, showering, doing your hair, your makeup, getting dressed, getting in the car, going and running your errands, right? And finding pleasure and finding joy and kind of finding the game in all of that. And this is kind of a more lighthearted transit for Capricorn, I think. And I think you'll appreciate that, because you can kind of get lost a little bit in the day-to-day. And it sort of takes you away from maybe some of the heftiness with the eclipse stuff, okay? Because I do know you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders right now, and you need an outlet. And if it's a creative outlet with the Mercury retrograde going on here, or if it's just an outlet in terms of enjoying your daily life, that's all good stuff. You're gonna need a place where you feel safe to just enjoy and to experience pleasure and to have fun. If there is someone in your life who doesn't like you to go out and have fun, who sometimes gets annoyed or frustrated or jealous or something like that, that might be something that you're needing to contend with. With the Mars component with the eclipses in Aries and Scorpio, there is a little bit of an elimination quality to it, especially with that full moon in Scorpio. And right now, you're probably asking yourself, like, what is it that I need to eliminate and get rid of? And with Mercury retrograde conjunct Uranus, it's either eliminate or completely change. And I do think something is needing a complete overhaul of some kind. It's either one of the two things, elimination or complete change. And those are really your options to open the door for your future, to open the door for your destiny, if you will. And with Mercury, now, he's not just retrograding, okay? He's retrograding in between Uranus and North Node. So as he comes back, and we'll talk more about this next month as well, but as he comes back, he's going to come back to the 5th degree. So it's also really close to that North Node, which, as we know, or we often say in modern Western astrology, it's like a destiny point. And with Mercury, he's allowing us to adjust. Mercury is really flexible. He's all sorts of all over the place. And whatever adjustments are needing to be made, I think it's easy to make those adjustments, especially with Venus in Gemini and also Saturn in Pisces in your 3rd house. Right now, Capricorn does not have anything working against them in terms of making the adjustments that you need to make. The only thing that might be working against you is fear. If you are afraid to say what you need to say, Mars in the 7th, right? If you're afraid of someone's reaction or you're afraid of what someone else might do, that's probably the only thing that's really stopping you. But if it was up to you and it was only you and you didn't have to take into consideration someone else, your evolution would be seamless right now. And your transitions and your actions and your ideas, it would be seamless. Really just kind of depends on how you want to view this. This might be the case where Capricorn just has to say, I need to make this change. I need to evolve in this way. I need to go to this place. I need to do this thing. And the other person is going to have to evolve in order to keep you in their life. Okay? Hopefully, for those of you who are married, you have a really open-minded, communicative, emotionally and spiritually intelligent person. If you don't, this is probably going to be a lot more dramatic and problematic. And anytime there's a Mercury retrograde, there's always room for misinterpretation or misunderstandings, but that is absolutely amplified by the Uranian influence. So it's like misunderstandings, but also on steroids. So you are going to need to be with someone who communicates well and who can truly listen and handle tower moments. Like if we're talking about the tarot, right? A tower moment is those disruptive events and those disruptive conversations that we sometimes have to have in order to fulfill the life that we want to have. And Pluto is demanding that. When we talk about freedom here, there does seem to be a situation or a circumstance that Capricorn wants to be free from. Okay? If you communicate compassionately, I think you will receive a compassionate response. Okay? It's a big couple of weeks ahead of us, specifically the last month and a half of April. That's when everything is really starting to happen. That's when we're really going to start feeling the intensity of the eclipse. Okay? All right. Thank you so much, Capricorn. You guys know how much I love you. Have an amazing month, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.